Welcome back, everybody. In response to concerns by advocates of religious freedom, the White House has finally proposed rule changes that would exempt certain faith-based organizations from ObamaCare's controversial contraception mandate. While critics, including the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, are still studying the proposal, holding their fire, the administration is hoping for their part that the new rule will bring an end to a year of sharp criticism and lawsuits. But does the new rule really change anything? Well, joining me for tonight's Q&A is Derryck Green. He's a member of the Black Leadership Program Project 21, and he is currently pursuing his doctorate in ministry. Derryck, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Derryck, these new rules that were released on Friday would expand the exemptions of religious organizations, including universities and hospitals, from directly paying for free birth control for their employees. Are you satisfied with the way that the HHS is now going about it?
Not so much, not so much. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I think that the administration could probably go a lot farther in exempting these organizations from having to not only, not pay for the contraceptive contained in the insurance plans, but also alleviate their ability and necessity to try to find other insurers to cover them that would offer those services. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but I think that we have a little bit further that we could go.
Right. Let's explain for our audience a little bit about how this would work. Basically, religious organizations that self-insure would not have to have their own insurance program cover birth control, but they would have to find an outside insurer that would provide this free birth control. So, Derryck, in your view, is this just kind of a shell game because that religious organization is in some way putting its employees in the path of free birth control?
I think it is. I think it's just a mini test to see, what organizations will buy into it, and what organizations and how many and how loudly those that disagree with it will cry. And so I think it's just a test to see how far religious organizations are willing to go. And I think that if they yell and scream and protest loud enough, I think that the administration might even come a little bit more forward in their direction, fully exempting nonprofit institutions, colleges, universities, and hospitals.
So, Derryck, we're talking about religious organizations. You just mentioned nonprofit universities and hospitals. But as we both know, and our viewers do too, there are dozens of private companies headed by religious folks, owned by religious folks, who are also suing the government. Hobby Lobby, for as one example. Where does this proposed rule change leave them? Michael Gerson, in a column for the Washington Post, he pointed out that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act allows the religious rights to be held by individuals, not only by nonprofit religious institutions. So does this rule change also apply to religious individuals?
So far, from my understanding, it doesn't. I think institutions or organizations like Hobby Lobby haven't been exempted, and so even though they're not a religious institution in and of themselves, they still hold religious values based on their religions, and so they still have to provide those insurance plans for their employees that provide contraception. So they're still out in the cold, and I think that's one reason why this so-called compromise isn't really so much of a compromise. It's just a test to see how far people will bend and basically accept what the administration is giving.
Now, some people are criticizing the rule change as a way that the government is now defining religion and religious institutions and object to that, even that practice. But some critics, they also point out that, look, the government already does this for IRS purposes, that it defines religious institutions that can be tax exempt. Is this any different when it comes to this birth control mandate?
I'm not necessarily sure. I think that it seems like now the administration is engaging in what would be a religious litmus test. So an organization that has a religious mandate, who employs people who agree with that mandate or charter and serves people of that charter, is okay, but those institutions, religious institutions that may service people who may not agree with their religious viewpoints or employ people that may not agree with those viewpoints, they're out in the cold. And so I think that litmus test is a very fine line for the administration to be walking right now, because it's in the process of defining who's religious and who's not based upon the people the institution serves.
So what recourse do viewers of this show, for example, who might disagree with the HHS mandate have? This is a proposed rule change by Health and Human Services that would enlarge the groups of exempted nonprofit religious organizations. But if you're, say, a private employer and you disagree with the HHS mandate, where do you go?
That's a good question. I think that those religious employers who, again, aren't religious institutions but have religious proclivities or values, they should still continue to sue the administration and find out what other legal recourse they can go about to have themselves included in the exemption as well, because I think that it's really unfair for so many people to be religious in and of themselves, to employ a large number of Americans, not be able to give their employees an insurance plan that fits, that it coincides with their religious values. So I think they should try to find whatever legal recourse that they can find and provide for themselves to continue to fight.
All right, Derryck Green from Project 21, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.